that were presented to us in advance, and a lot of them had already been addressed, so we'll pick them out. Our plan was to alternate between the people who submitted questions to us beforehand and the audience. If you have questions for us, I would appreciate if you walk up front here, so it makes it easier on Deb, and then we can have some kind of order. The first question I was going to ask, Christine did a good job for me, and she asked the question. I'm going to take a question from someone who submitted one. They said, what exactly would be the expected consequences, best or worst case scenarios, fiscal and otherwise, if we refuse to comply with the mandates of NCLB, which I don't know what that is, and if we totally disassociate ourselves from Common Core? Can you be as specific as possible?
Is this me again?
Do you understand the question?
Somewhat. In other words, if we secede from the union and decide that we're going to have our own education system and void of the Fed, essentially, right? Okay. So there is a tremendous amount of money that comes for Title I. Title I are an income disadvantaged group, and that is funded from the Fed. And there are certain strings attached to that. You can only spend it in certain areas. That segment of the population will be there whether the Fed's there or not. So when we're talking about property tax relief, we're talking about pensions, which this should be about pensions, because that's a single line item. I could go on forever, but the initiatives have to change, and I agree with the speakers that broached that before. That said, it's easy to say we're going to do away with $500 million, we're going to do away with this and do away with that, but when the rubber hits the road, the school districts still have to support that education, whether it be ESL, whether it has IEPs, and the IEP is individual education programs for special needs children. That population is increasing for whatever reason, maybe over-identification, we can talk about that at another time. But the fact is that the cost of this is tremendous, because we're talking about perhaps having 2 instructors or monitors per child in some cases in the classroom. So yes, what would happen? We void ourselves from all that money for Title I, we pick it up ourselves, and then we would establish standards and throw the Common Core out. Where would the standards come from? That's my question is, I hear a lot of arguments against something. And I explained the concept of having accountability and about closing the gap between the Radners of the world. Radnor, you know where Radnor is? Or to different Easton or Lower Marion. Have you heard of those districts? Council Rock, Newtown. They get 5% of their money from Harrisburg. They have a tremendous amount of wealth in the district. They spend $25,000, $30,000 per student. Kamaka spends 10. That's the difference. They don't want to hear from Harrisburg. They don't want to hear from anything. But when I'm talking about an equality of education and accountability of education, there has to be something. So if not this, if this is bad, okay, what then? And I'd love to hear from perhaps my friends here on the panel what they would replace that with. Because we've just ceremoniously thrown out now. We're doing an exercise here. Based on that question, we are no longer in the United States as far as the Department of Education. And I would vote, by the way, to do away with the Federal Department of Education. So I'm not here advocating for that, but I am living in the real world, and I know what we're going to do there.
All right, so congratulations, folks. We got rid of Common Core. Now here comes the best part. Now we have to allow people to be free. And here's what I mean. You're going to hear the examples like you said, of Radnor and Tamaqua, and there's such a differential in cost. Folks, 2 + 2 = 4. I gave you that for free, okay? We have to get rid of the concept that the more money we spend equals better outcomes. Regardless if school district A spends $30,000 per kid, school district B spends $10,000 per kid, the whole system plays a role in why this method fails. Because we have poor teachers who we can't get rid of. And let's be honest, folks, there are poor teachers out there. We have to be able to get rid of them. We have to be able to address the problems with the unions as well, and why most of the money doesn't go to the classroom education. We have to fix the big picture. If you have a big plan, if you have a big idea, then you really got to go for it. And you really can't, go halfway with it. So what do? We don't have standards. We need standards by next year. Well, some people, Dr. Sandra Stotsky, who was responsible for Massachusetts standards when they were #1 for many years, and who has worked with Pennsylvania before with Governor Ridge, she has offered to help us create standards to what Massachusetts was. So basically, the gist of it is, if you let people decide what's best for themselves and best for their kids without the federal or any government overreach, then that will work. Because if school district A sees that school district B is succeeding, well, maybe they want to borrow some of those ideas and try it, rather than the top-down model. Let's decide for ourselves locally what we can do, and that's best. And we can spend all night talking about that, but and I'd love to have this conversation with you, Mr. Wigg, about some ideas. So.
And thank you for that. I appreciate that there's an awful lot of information to be shared, but in all fairness, I'd like to get as many questions from the audience as we can. So I appreciate it if everyone could be as brief as possible. We have a lady over here who's been waiting and waiting. It's your turn, dear.
I just want to get up there. Mr. Whitty, evidence-based research by the lady on the end, I believe your name's Dawn, has proven that it's a failure. So why are you continuing the failure? Also, second part of this, I work with a lot of inner city kids. How in the world are you helping them? How in the world? There's no way they're going to be able to come up out of poverty by this education system. I think it's a travesty of trust. And if my generation put people on the moon, what are this generation going to be able to do when I see the education? You can see it culturally, that a lot of the children, the young people, don't really have it together as far as education goes. It's just a job.
How many people went to see Ben Carson up at Penn State? I thought there was a representation from you guys there. Well, anyway, have you ever heard Ben Carson's story?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. The prejudice of low expectations is saying to a child without an IEP, you can't do it. We can't expect you to do it because you just are not built that way. I'm sorry, you were born into an area that just can't do it, which he could have done very easily and didn't. So you be careful when you talk about these kids can't. Now I understand the idea of having IEPs, and there's kids with problems, and that's what we're throwing a ton of money at, all of us. But if you think that you cannot expect a child to graduate or to pass an Algebra 1 exam, Algebra 1, not 2 or geometry or trig or calc, then my submission is that they're going to have problems down the road. And if they can't pass it, it's not their fault, it's the school district's fault.
Having the Keystone exam is a reliable test. My daughter and thousands of students have passed algebra with an A, a B, a C, and have not been able to pass the Algebra Keystone. How does the state board and the PDE know that it's a reliable test?
You have just described the exact problem that districts will pass, perhaps socially promote children. I'm not saying that's your daughter, not at all. But there are districts that socially promote. And you all know what that is, right? Because you don't make the grade and then you promote them. So if you're getting an A or a B in your class, based on the curriculum that you're being taught, obviously the curriculum is not aligned to the standards that's being assessed. That's just the way it is. And there's many districts that have refused to accommodate that, hoping that this too will go away, because education is a revolving door. But that's the reason. It's the district's fault, of which I am part of a district.
What evidence do you have that these tests are valid and reliable? Teachers don't know what's on them. You don't.
I'm just going to say one quick thing. At what point do we do away with district diplomas and just start issuing federal high school diplomas if all these tests and all this mandates come from the federal government?
That's a good point. I have a lot of questions here, but I hate to see all these people standing in line, so I'll take another one from the audience.
Yeah, I echo the young lady there, comment about they don't know what's on the test. The teachers don't know, the administrators can't look at the test, parents can't look at the test. That's like me putting you in a room with a blind on and saying, go to the bathroom over there. It's over there, and you keep walking. You don't even know if you're going to the bathroom. They could be taking you to a sink. But my whole thing is where does this stop? I got grandkids. My kids are grown now, okay? I'm a Pennsylvania State GED person. I dropped out of school. I passed from Pennsylvania in 1982 with 15% higher than the average American. It's on my paper, okay? I challenge the kids today that are taught this, whatever you want to call it, Common Core, to learn how to use even a tape measure. I'm in the construction field. They come from college and can't even do that. Where does it stop? Where can we pull apart to say enough is enough, Pennsylvania? Governor Wolfinger, listen or get out, resign, because we need this to go forward. We need to go forward, not for me anymore, because my life's set. But we're
Okay, let's not have a speech. Just a question, please. I apologize. Well, I know there's a lot of people like to ask questions.
Where does it stop? Where can we go forward with this? Where are we planning?
Okay, that's a question. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm not trying to be tough, but it's a real question. It looks like someone wants to answer your question. Thank you.
We can opt our kids out of the tests, all of them.
We can't hear you without the mic.
The PPA? There is legislation to put a delay on the Keystone Grant requirement for 2 years. And some legislators that I've spoken to would like to get rid of the PPA. It is impossible, best case scenario, for Pennsylvania to support the PPA. Financially, time, instructional time, remediation time for the kids, it's impossible. Why they put this in is frightening, because there's just no way that it can work. Parents can refuse to do the PBA, which is what states who don't have an opt-out option do. They refuse. So you can opt out of the PSSAs, the Keystone exams, you can opt out of test prep, and you can refuse the PBA.
Thank you. Boy, I'm going through a lot of questions up here rapidly from what their comments, but I have one here that I would like to ask. Why is the State Board of Education not required to perform a cost accounting of every program and regulation they promote prior to the regulations being approved? School districts are constantly being put in a position of having to find funds to fulfill mandates that come from the state board. Larry, I guess you're stuck with this one?
Well, the truth of the matter is that we do it. We have to do a costing study because in order to go through the Independent Regulatory Review Commission, IRC, they require that to see what the impact is on school districts. If it's not done, they won't pass it. So that is the last hurdle before it becomes regulation. And there was, in fact, a study done contrary to Senator Dinniman's study that says hundreds of millions of dollars. I can tell you anecdotally, in Tamaqua, it costs us in year one $30,000 for the remediation and everything. That's in Tamaqua. That's a very typical district, 2,000, 2,100 students, falls right in the middle demographic. So if, in fact, and I have children too, I have 3 kids. One is off the reservation, the other 2 did pass the Keystones. The fact is that the state board is very cognizant about unfunded mandates. And if the IRC, which is independent with a small I, Regulatory Review Commission, doesn't sees it that way, they will balance it out. That's just the fact.
My school district this year spent about $250,000 on this unfunded mandate. Westchester Area School District spent about $600,000. This is before the class of 2017 has taken the biology and literature Keystone exams because they were taken this May, for the most part, because they're 10th grade exams. Also, what's happening is classes are being cut. Students have to schedule an elective. They're not able to take elective, but they're also cutting levels of classes. There's standard, college prep, honors, and AP. So to save money, schools have to decide which classes they're not going to offer the following year so that they can have the teachers in classrooms for this remediation.
Thank you. Again, I hate to see you people standing so long, so please let's have one from the audience.
What I want to ask you is, you raised a question of, Larry, you raised a question that if we don't use what you're using now, what would you use if somebody come up with an idea? Well, I don't know exactly, but I graduated in 1969 from Reading High. And it so often happens to me, and I bet it happens to a lot of other people here, that you walk into a store, and you buy something, or wherever you're at, and the young person standing there can't even give you change without using the register. Where I got to tell them sometimes what the change is. That's the education system I came from. So when I look at today, and I see what it is, and they can't even do that, and amongst others, we go on longer on that stuff. I think to myself, so you're asking what could be, and I like an opinion from all of you, whoever wants to talk about it, is whatever it was when I was in high school. As a teenager at that time, I don't know what it was. I was just in high school waiting to get out, But I took Algebra 1. I had trig, and I had Algebra 2.
Did you have a question, sir?
Yeah, my question is, do you know what the education system was at that time, and why does it get changed? And does anybody ever on Saturday mornings listen to Voices on WEU? The naiveness of those.
Okay, that's 2 questions. That's 2 questions. The first question is, I'm significantly older than you. I graduated in '67, and yes, I can do change. However, you know why, all of you know why they don't do change. Right here is why, because the change pops up, so you don't have to think anymore. And when mechanical and electronic devices takes the place of your thinking, what do? You give up the thinking. The reading of the ruler, now they have lasers, you go like this and tell you what it is. Sooner or later, nobody will be able to read a ruler. Technology has circumvented a certain amount of that knowledge skill and when we took the show on the road, the head of the math department at Penn State University said, please don't require, this is back in '96, please don't require electronic devices too early in a child's development because it will circumvent that